Hey everyone, it's Arfan, and I am back with another episode of Successful Lead Generating Coaching Show. And I have a special guest, but before I go ahead and have Justin introduce himself, I want to kind of lay a little picture here. Okay. So it was in 2018 that I was part of a live event, and I actually, part of their process, they were giving a coaching session, and I went and I sat down, and my mind was blown with the information I was given. And little did I know it was an actual sales process. I got a lot of value out the entire session. And that session was with Justin. And I've shared a lot in the past about how I got started. And it was at this event where the coach mentioned that I do Facebook ads on the stage, and I got back home and I started getting a bunch of DMs. So the latest actually down, this was one of the individuals at that event that I've met. And I'm so actually happy and honored to have him on the show because he's been an integral part of my journey to someone I've known from since the beginning. Before I even had an official business, before I even had an official offer, I got an opportunity to see what sales was truly like, and I count myself as blessed to have had that privilege and opportunity to kind of see sales from a really great standpoint. Someone who actually does it with truly from the heart and not just from the pocket. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Justin Janowski to the show. Justin, how you doing today?
Hey, Arfan, good. Thanks for having me. It's fun to think back to that story and how we met and the very beginning for both of us, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of dive a little bit into that for your journey, but I wanted to also just to talk about Justin here a little bit. He is a high integrity sales coach, a coach for entrepreneurs, those who especially are starting a Christian entrepreneur, starting a new online coaching business, or those who are looking to really step it up a bit, increase their sales, and also be part of a community that's really truly caring and deep. And I've been part of Justin's Faith to Influence community since was it December or January?
Yep,
One
that's
or
right.
two of those, right at the beginning of when you launch a community, this recent community, anyways. But I followed your journey along the way, and I've got to say, for a membership, it's probably one of the on a weekly basis, one of the things I look forward to the most. So, you guys are going to get an opportunity to hear from Justin. You also get an opportunity to kind of see why I'm talking so highly of him. It's not just words; it's actually it's truth, and I'm like super happy to have him on the show. So without further ado, Justin, I'll turn it over to you. Can you just tell us about your journey from starting, from actually launching your business in 2018, launching Faith Influence 2018, and really becoming this high integrity sales coach to entrepreneurs? Can you tell us a little about that?
Absolutely. I remember being new and I made this decision to leave my job and start my coaching business. And it felt big and scary. And I wasn't sure whether or not I could do it. I wasn't working specifically with Christian coaches at the time, it was more of a broad Christian entrepreneur standpoint. But
Mm,
men specifically, when I started out, now I work with men and women. But starting out, this men's group, it went way better than I imagined. I did over $250,000 in revenue in my first year. And one of the biggest reasons why was I knew how to sell. And I've been in sales since I was 18. I knew how to sell in a high integrity way. I knew how to design and price a program. And as I started working with a couple of coaches, they wanted to build their business. And I recognized very quickly that most of them struggled with business design. They struggled with pricing. They struggled with money
mm-hmm.
mindset, sales mindset, and sales execution. And many of them just were scared of sales or thought it was going to be this bad thing for them or the other person. And that was my zone of genius. And so I decided to work specifically with Christian coaches, men and women now. And God's continued to bless my business. We're about to go over $2 million in sales since we started, which is crazy to say out loud. I was just hoping to make
Incredible.
60 grand in my first year, and God has really put us on a journey, and we're building a team right now. And I'm excited to scale to the next level. And I just love helping newer Christian entrepreneurs and coaches launch and succeed in their businesses.
That's awesome. I love being just kind of seeing your journey as too as well. It's like you mentioned, we kind of started a little bit on the journey at the same time, and it's been incredible. And 250K in the first year, not a lot of people could say that. And it a lot of it does come down to sales, like you mentioned. So when we talk about high integrity sales, right? What is that? What does that mean to you, and how does that differ from what we would probably look at as a traditional sales approach?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's an important one because I think when we show up with integrity and we do things the right way, we remove resistance for ourselves and we remove
Mhm.
resistance for the other person. And so for me, high integrity sales is really honest. High integrity sales
Mm.
feels good for both people, whether a purchase is made or not. High
Yes.
integrity sales is about asking great questions and helping people make the best decision for themselves. I believe sales, when done right, just feels like coaching with an invitation at the end. It feels like leadership. It
Mm.
feels even like love. It can be this wonderful expression of like God's love in the marketplace if we do it the right way, because ultimately sales is going to help people become more of who they want to become or
Mhm.
have more of what they want. That's why people buy things, or experience more of what they want. And so it can be this thing that leads people to where they already want to go if we do it the right way. And so it's about being completely honest, completely transparent, and simply making it easy for the right people to say yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love you actually broke that down. The reason why I appreciate it so much because a lot of times, especially those who are new, who are just coming on board with coaching, or you mentioned you made the decision to quit your job, which I actually want to ask you a question about that in a second. But when they're transitioning from just doing a typical 9 to 5 to now coaching and going into sales, it can kind of feel like it's intimidating. Like you have to overdo it. Like you can't really bring your true authentic self into it to do it out of love, with thinking in the back if you got to close a sale. And so I appreciate you breaking down what high integrity sales mean to you and how it can really differ from the traditional biases that we may have from what sales can and
Mhm.
should be. So I love that. I do want to back up a question, a quick. So you mentioned that you decided to quit your job and go straight into entrepreneurship with a goal of 60K for the first year, which you totally crushed, right? Good job. Um, how did you come to that decision, right? So what was the thought process leading up to that decision to say, hey, I'm quitting and I'm going full force into it? Can you just give us a little behind the scenes of how that worked for you?
Yeah, I'm really an all or nothing kind of person. Like I'm best when I'm all in. And what I've recognized with a lot of people over the years is that most people who try to dip their toe in the water, or most people who try to do 3 or 4 different things, fail at all of those things. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a sad truth. And I don't want to suggest that people shouldn't consider building their coaching business initially as a side hustle. For some people, it's the only way, or it's the only responsible way, and that's absolutely fine. But I don't know any coaches who are really successful while performing another job.
Mm,
Most people who I know who are succeeding at the highest level in entrepreneurship, they're known for their business. That's the work that they
mm,
do. They're all in on it. And so for me, when I was working with my other company, there was no way I could like be all in there and do great work and start this business and do great work. I knew that if I tried to build this business on the side, but I had the protection and security of the income I was already earning, I wouldn't do very well. I'm also
mm.
not a workaholic. I'm not an ultimate hustler. I'm not going to work the extra hours on nights and weekends and things like that to make it work. I want that time with my family. I want that time with God. I want that time like to spend some time by
Yes.
myself doing things I love and care about. And so for me, if it was going to work and I was going to succeed in my business, I needed to be all in on it. And
Mm,
so when I made that decision to quit my job, I had about 3 months runway. I had a little bit of savings, enough that I could like get started and be okay. But I also knew where I was going to go. I told my wife in 6 months, if I'm not proving that this is going to work, here's where I'm going to go and ask for a job. So I was prepared
mm,
to move to option B if I had to. I know people are want to burn their boats, but I knew what my backup plan was, but I wanted to give it a really full shot. And because my family needed the income, my we had just had our first baby.
mm-hmm.
Grace was born just before I started my business, and my wife left her job to be a stay-at-home mom for the first year of Grace's life. And so it was actually probably the scariest time to make a decision like this, but I felt like God was calling me to it. And I wanted to surrender and trust that. And after crying and talking about it for a month and thinking about it and praying and feeling all the anxieties and everything else, my wife and I both decided like it felt like this was what God was calling me to. And because I had to succeed, I had to succeed. Like there
Mm-hmm.
was no other option. This was the way my family was going to have income. This was the way I was going to provide for our expenses and our food and our house and all those things. And I had a little baby at home. So I had to make it work. I take all resistance to sales, all self-doubt, all concern to take the right action and throw it out the window because my why was way bigger than my concerns or my fears because I had to do it. And so for
Yeah.
me, putting my back against the wall made me come out running hard and working hard and finding my way forward.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of our audience, especially those that I'm aiming to help to as well, are still at that 9 to 5, and they're teeter-totter between: do I step down part time? Do I totally leave, or go into it? So I love actually just asking seasoned entrepreneurs their mindset, their approach, because sometimes you can feel like you're not alone. We all did it. We all were, we all had those weeks and months where we're like, am I really going to do this? What am I really even thinking of doing? Even
Yeah.
potentially sometimes second guessing, even though we can strongly feel that calling, like God is telling us, hey, do this, do this. We can have that resistance to it, but making that decision at a scary time too, as well. But it worked out for you, which is great to see. I'm glad you mentioned you also had the 3 months there too, as well, because a lot of people, like, those who sometimes have to go back sooner rather than later, they take that step without having those things in place, without even having, okay, if this doesn't work, there is a plan B. So I appreciate you doing that. So, all right, so we laid a good foundation here. You guys kind of get an idea of who Justin is, what he does. So today, what we're going to talk about is the art for influence, the art of influence, right? So what does it take to really be an influential salesperson? And I'm gonna dive into a few different things here with Justin. So I hope you guys would get a lot of value from it. And we appreciate your feedback too as well. So drop some comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. Send us a reply if you're just checking this from the email. We'd love to engage and connect with the audience and be able to even answer follow-up question. And towards the end, we'll give you an opportunity to even connect with Justin if you liking what you're hearing and you want to be part of his world. I highly suggest it. I highly promote it. I mean, I'll shout it to the rooftop to join Justin's community in whatever aspect you're looking to get support with. If you're new, existing, you just want to be around a bunch of cool people and get a support like you probably never had before. So we'll give an opportunity for that too as well. So you ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, awesome. So we're gonna go a little bit into the sales mindset first, if that's okay. And really, what I want to talk about with sales mindset is just to know what are some of the common misconceptions about sales that often hold coaches back, whether they're new or experienced or anything at all. What are some of the common misconceptions that hold them back?
I think that most salespeople believe that sales, or most entrepreneurs, especially people who have not been salespeople and are moving into entrepreneurship, when they realize, oh no, I'm going to have to make sales, they imagine that sales is going to have to be pushy. Sales is going to have to be sleazy. Sales is going to be uncomfortable. That if they get on a sales call with somebody and that person doesn't buy, that it could hurt the relationship, or that people will judge them or reject them or like them less because they invite somebody to a sales call. So there's all these fears of judgment and rejection and like doing things the wrong way and hurting relationships. And I think that that's why people are like avoiding sales. And there's also this belief that some people have that people say, I'm just not a good salesperson. I'm just not natural. It's not for me. And like, as if like this was something that some could do well and others can't, and they don't have it. And so those are some of the stories I think people have running around their minds that need to be shifted.
Yeah, I love you broke that down because I feel it's also similar for like leadership as an example to where people think like you're just a natural born leader. Either you're a natural born leader and that's it. Like, there's no way. And I personally believe that leadership is something you learn, something that you can learn along the way. You can grow and develop as a skill. Similarly, too, as well. Same with sales. So thank you for sharing those misconceptions. I thoroughly agree with all of those. So how can they start to shift their mindset now? So instead of viewing sales as, from that scope of misconception, whether it's a fear or just holding themselves back, to really look at it as sales as a service rather than this like necessary evil that only certain people can do.
Yeah. Well, the first step to changing or transforming anything is awareness. And so if people begin to first become aware of the stories they're telling themselves, then they have the capacity to change it. And so if somebody's listening to this and they know that they've been avoiding sales, they've been struggling with sales, they've been afraid to start, or they've been stuck at the starting line with their entrepreneurship journey because of a resistance to sales, the question I would ask is, what are the stories that you think you've been telling yourself? Whether they've been
Mm,
conscious or unconscious, what's running around in your mind? What do you believe sales is? Sales is blank. And if you can
mm,
just write that story down, same thing with stories you have about yourself, especially the disempowering ones, stories you have about money, especially the disempowering ones. If you can just write down the negative, painful stories that you've been telling yourself about sales, money, your own identity as a coach or a leader or an entrepreneur. I'm not good enough. No one's going to like me. No one's going to buy that from me. I can't
mm,
charge that much. Or sales is pushy, or I'm not a salesperson. Any of those kinds of things, if we can first gain awareness and take this big story in our head and make it small on the page, writing it down and just like honoring the truth of that story that's been running is a good first step. Once we can see the truth, then we might consider asking ourselves, is that story I've been telling myself actually true? So it's true that
mm.
you've been telling yourself, but is it actually a true story? I went through this process with Laura Nizer, and we both know Laura, a mutual friend of
Yeah.
ours, a client at Faith to Influence, who also I met at the same conference with you at so many years ago now. Laura, when she came to me, said her old story was sales is pushy. So she wrote that down.
Mm,
And I said, Laura, are you pushy? And she said, oh, no, I'm not. I'm like, if I put you on a sales call, would you then be pushy? She said, no, I can't do it. That's why I'm not a good salesperson. I said, okay, if I put you on a sales call and you wouldn't be pushy, how would you show up on the sales call? And she said, well, I think I'd show up to serve people on the sales call. I'm service oriented. I said, okay, great. So if sales with you is sales with you pushy? And she
mm.
said, I guess sales with me isn't pushy. Okay, how is sales with you? What's that like? And she said, sales with me is service. And so she crossed a line through that old story. So if we write the old story down, we draw a line straight through it. Underneath, we can write the true story. So the old story was
Mm.
sales is pushy. Draw a line through it. Doesn't matter what's ever been with anybody else. The true new story for her is sales with me is service. And she writes that down and then
Love that.
tells herself that again and again, puts it big on a board somewhere on a post-it note, and just runs into that story again and again and again. Then hopefully over time, we can change the soundtrack and we can have a new story that begins to play. And we probably have to do that with a few different stories. And then we might need to surround ourselves with people who empower the truer stories and who
Absolutely.
encourage us and believe in us and believe higher level stories than what we used to believe. And if you're faith inclined, like it's also helpful just to pray, like, God, help me transform the story, help me change what I used to believe, and help me honor
Mhm.
the truth that you've put inside of me now.
I love that. This is going to turn into like a mini coaching session. So if you're listening to this right now, pause it because and answer that question. Answer that question: what sales is like for you, or your beliefs on sales, and then reframe it. Because just rewind this for the past 3-4 minutes and do that. Because I can guarantee you right now, as you're listening to this, as Justin was talking, the most loudest belief you have was screaming in your head. And the more you think about it, the more you'll try to shuffle that down. So really pause this. If you're driving, pull over, do whatever you have to do, answer that question, and of course, and connect with Justin so you can actually really get the coaching you need for it. So, anyway, thanks for breaking that down because that's a really big one. Really, just really
Yeah.
reframing that whole the negative belief to something that's actually more empowering. This is where it's now it's not just it's the things that other people have said or society has put on you that's different from who you truly are, and now being in alignment to what sales is for who you are, and that takes a lot of pressure off, a lot of any fear that potentially is there can help to remove it. So I love you breaking that down, right? So on this topic of mindset, right? So many people, especially those I talk to, especially in the overall coaching industry, they the next part of this is they really struggle with just like sales avoidance. Right. So what do you think? And you mentioned fear being part of the mindset shift there. So what do you think is the root cause of just the avoidance in your experience?
Yeah, it's oftentimes one of three things. One is what we just talked about. They've got an old story about what sales is, and the story is like sales is pushy, or sales is greedy, or sales is sleazy, or something of that nature. And they're thinking to themselves internally that they're not really necessarily consciously doing this, but unconsciously they're like, "Well, I'm not pushy, I'm not salesy, I'm not
Mm,
sleazy, I'm not greedy." And so because there's that conflict, like there's this thing that they'd have, if they had to do, would mean that there's somebody different than what they thought they were. And so
Mm,
they'll find ways to self-sabotage, and they won't do it because they don't want to be pushy, greedy, sleazy, and everything else. And so if we change that story, it's more likely that we'll move into a sales conversation. But the other thing is a story around money. That would be the second issue. A lot of people, Christians that I talk to, like have this old story that's running that money's the root of all evil. And the Bible
mm,
doesn't say that. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And so if we make
yeah.
money an idol and we love it and care about it more than our neighbor or more than God, we've got a big problem. But money can also be a tool for good. And so my story is that the more I earn, the more I can give. And so I don't have
Mm,
resistance to earning. And so some people self-sabotage because they have a resistance to earning too much money. They have a resistance to having success, a resistance to charging a fair price. And like that needs to shift, or they won't get on a call and invite people to their offer. But the third reason people don't do it is because they've got stories about themselves and they think that they're
mm,
not good enough or they're not worthy or no one will buy from them, or they got this fear they're going to get rejected. And what would that mean about who they are if they were rejected by this person they care about or love? And so they'll have resistance around that. So most of it comes from these stories about ourselves, about money, and about sales. But I guess the other part, Arfan, that I see in the marketplace is so many people begin to define success as progress
mm.
rather than outcomes and results. And I like that to a certain degree. I like progress over perfection. I like celebrating the small wins and the little progresses over time. But the dangerous side of this is too much of a good thing becomes not so good, right? The
Yeah.
danger is that people begin to recognize progress as success without ever tracking and identifying with the real results of sales and revenue and profitability and real paying clients that they can help. And so what they do is they get caught in the trap of all the things the marketplace tells us we need to do. They start doing more Facebook posts, they start doing live videos, they start doing Instagram posts, they start doing LinkedIn posts, they start writing their book, they start writing their email newsletter, they start their podcast. Not that that's a bad, all these things are good things. They revise their website for the third or fourth time and change their brand colors. And they begin to do a ton of things that feel like progress and make them feel like they're living out their dream. And yet they've got zero clients and they're
Mm,
not really helping people the way they intended or creating the income that they want for their family and that they could tithe from more to their church and all the other things. And so they get busy, but they don't focus on any of the things that are actually going to lead to sales, clients, and income. And
mm.
those are actually the activities that we ought to be doing. Most coaches are playing this long game, which is a good thing. Like, you want to start a podcast? Great. You want to write a book? Awesome. I love it. You want to post on social and be an influencer? I'm in for it. It's awesome. But maybe pick one of those things and spend a certain amount of time on it, not all your time on it. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, while you're building and playing the long game, you have to play the short game, which is to say, what can I do today to make more sales this week, this month, and this year? Because only when
Yes.
we make a sale can we really have the impact that we want to have and the income we want to have. And so we need to get focused on short game sales activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone, I have an advertising agency, so we focus a lot on the short game. And
Yes.
I come across often clients where they're looking just to want to grow my podcast listenership and things like that. I'm like, well, that's great, but there's not going to be a return on ad spend on that for quite a while. So you're okay with spending a good amount for a bit without seeing that come back. And usually the case is always no, I want to be able to get a return on ad spend as quick and as soon as possible. And
Mhm.
that really comes down to, well, what offer do we have? What sales, what sales can we make? So it's a good point to bring up the short game versus the long game. So what I hear you saying, so like basically like probably the underlying one of the big foundational strategy here to really help entrepreneurs overcome their fear of selling and embrace it as a crucial part of their business is to really just sit down and really take the time to look at what are the stories they have of sales
Mhm.
and reframe those. What are the stories they have of money and reframe those? What are the stories they have of themselves um, as an entrepreneur, as a person, as a business owner, and reframe those? Am I correct with that?
Yes. And then make sure that you're prioritizing your time, and every single week in your calendar are activities that are going to lead directly to sales opportunities and invitations to invite the right people to buy. Like everything
Mhm.
else is fun and interesting and could be effective over many years, but isn't usually going to be effective now. So it's a prioritization of what can I do this week to actually lead to sales opportunities. And so
Gotcha.
that's a big, bold decision. But if you are going to be in entrepreneurship, that's a big, bold decision too. And so you have to
Yes.
decide at some point, I'm going to get serious about this and I'm actually going to lead myself towards opportunities where I can win.
Awesome. Love that. Love all this so far. Thank you again, Justin, for coming on the show. I appreciate We're not done. I just want to extend some appreciation. So I feel like it's ending there. So I love that. Right. So let's take a shift then. We covered a few things right here. Of course, the mindset portion, sales avoidance. And so we talked about money here. So just a quick thing on money mindset, right? Um, and you mentioned a story, but I'm just curious as far as like how does a person's like relationship with money impact their sales performance?
Yeah. Some people hold on to money in a really scarce way.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got maybe old stories from their family upbringing, or maybe they've got real situations they're dealing with right now. And so I understand like money's such a sensitive, delicate topic for people. But the truth is, if we hold on too tight, or we want or feel like we need the sale too much. Some people have commission breath, one of my mentors used to call it, where it's like they're desperate for the sale, or
Mm,
they're really scarce in their mindset, like they don't have enough. And if we show up on sales calls with a scarcity, I don't have enough, I'm worried about money kind of like mindset, that's going to rub off on the people that we're with. Emotions are contagious. People feel what we feel. When we laugh, other people laugh. When we cry,
hmm.
other people cry or feel sad.
Yeah.
When we yawn, the people around us yawn. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
we're very connected. And so if you show up with a scarcity mindset and a fear of not having enough money, you'll probably find that your prospects are going to have scarcity and a fear of not
Mm,
having enough money. And they're going to have a harder time making a big investment with you. They might not
hmm.
say it out loud like that, but it's just going to happen that way. If you show up with abundance, like you have more than you could ever possibly need, and God's going to continue to open doors for you and provide for you, when you are abundant and you don't need anything from the other person, they can feel that. And when you don't
Hmm.
need them, but you've got an opportunity for them, it's a lot more attractive for people to walk through that door. They're going to be a lot more interested in moving forward. And so there's that relationship. We want to have this abundance. I have enough. I have more than I need already mindset if we can when we're on sales calls. I know it's
Hmm.
easier said than done for the struggling new entrepreneur, but we
Yeah.
can get ourselves into that mindset right before a sales call with a great pre-call ritual. And then the other side of this is for me, like my relationship with money, I think some people have to heal their relationship with giving and receiving.
Mm,
Some people really have a struggle to give. And like the truth is, what do you need to do? You probably need to start tithing, or you need to
hmm.
start tithing more. You need to trust God. He calls us to give him his first and his best, or our first and our best. And so I give God, and my wife and I have tithed 10 to 20% ever since we were married, and it's like made such a huge difference. And we've given and tithed in times that were hard, where it felt like
Hmm.
we didn't have enough, and we just continued to trust God, and he's always provided for us through that. And so, and then I'm also going to be giving of like referrals. I'm going to be giving of my time. I'm going to support people well. And I think that if we are generous in giving, it should
Hmm.
be easier for us to receive. And so if somebody's listening to this and they're like, giving my money, I can't, and they're holding on too tight, like that's for you. And I know it's going to be hard to receive if you've been in that place, but if you gain awareness is
Hmm.
the first step to change and transformation. And just consider it, sit with it, pray with it, and see if you could heal your relationship to giving and to
Hmm.
abundance. And when you heal that, receiving should be easier. Some people, though, do struggle with receiving. And some Christian entrepreneurs are like, oh, I'll
Hmm.
give. I'm going to give my money. I'm going to give my time. I'm going to give all my services away for free. I'm so abundant. But they're
Yeah.
never receiving. And that's not effective either. If we don't ever receive, we're going to run out of our capacity to give. We can't
Yes,
pour from an
true.
empty cup. And so we need to be able to receive and replenish and fill ourselves up so we have more to give. And so if you need to heal your relationship around receiving, stop saying no thanks if somebody asks you if you're thirsty and wants something. Stop saying, oh, I couldn't possibly when somebody else tries to pick up the bill. Instead, just say, wow, thank you so much. And start to find yourself receiving. Pray to God, God, help
Mm-hmm.
me to receive your abundance. Help me receive your gifts a little bit more. And if you're struggling with receiving, in some cases, maybe it's because you need to give more. And if you give more, all of a sudden your receiving part of you is
Mm-hmm.
going to heal. But we need to have a mindset of being willing to give abundantly and boldly in the marketplace and to our neighbors and to our churches, and a mindset around receiving and a willingness to receive and say thank you and receive God's gifts and our neighbors' gifts. And when we allow other people to give to us and we allow ourselves to receive, we're actually giving other people an opportunity to give and to be generous. And that's important. And so I just really believe in the marketplace and win-win or no deal relationships as
Mm-hmm.
often as possible. You are giving, you are receiving, both sides are winning. There's goodness to it. And that's what we
Yeah,
want to create in our
100%.
businesses.
Love that. Awesome. You covered quite a bit there. Really important stuff, especially on the abundance portion. And one thing I learned um, a bit, I mean, I think it was the same event we met. Was talking about just, if you ever feel like you're not really in abundance and you're kind of in scarcity, it's a mental thing, really. It really is. And to
Mhm.
put yourself out of it is really just to look around and just kind of just look at all the abundance we have. Like, I'm sitting in this office and just everything it took to even have this office, the bookcases, the books, every single thing. Like, there's a tremendous amount of even the land that the house is built on and the roads outside. It took, I didn't pay for that road, but I guarantee that was tens of hundreds of $1,000s just to lay the road down, things like that. So there's so much abundance all around us that we could sometimes take for granted. Just being able to put that in our mind can make a big shift. And you also mentioned the giving and the receiving, and I find that to be truth. Where sometimes even with compliments, when someone gives a compliment, I used to be the person that's like, oh no, just kind of like literally push it away, and I just
Mm,
became mindful of that. Like, I can actually receive the compliment. I should say thank
yeah.
you. You can just receive that. So, with the idea of Christian coaches and coaches in general, but obviously, the target you help a lot with Christian coaches who struggle with charging for their services because they're so used to giving or doing things free, serving, not just they do it for just serving, doing God's work. What advice do you have for them when it comes to the idea of charging a fair price for their services?
Yeah. For me, I know that a lot of people have a hard time with pricing, and some of it's money mindset, but the other part of it is simply just not knowing what to do. If you've not been an entrepreneur, you've not been a coach before, it can feel very difficult to just like put a price up on something that you're not sure what it should cost.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that a lot of people in the marketplace are just creating arbitrary prices. They're just coming up with a round number that sounds interesting and sounds right and sounds like what somebody else charged, and maybe I'll do that. But I want to invite people to be a little bit more thoughtful in their process. And so what that would look like is saying, can you do some market research and find out what are my competitors charging for this? Like, what is the going
Mm-hmm.
rate for this service or this product in the marketplace? And there's probably a range, right? And so once we figure out what the range is, then we want to ask ourselves the question of, where do I fit in that range? Am I an economy model? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the really good price and that's how I'm going to find my customers, or am I the luxury model? There's a huge market for both, and there's of course everything in between. And you might decide that you're the economy versus the luxury model based on the types of clients that you want to work with, or your skill set, or just what you're feeling called to right now, and that could change over time. And then typically when we're talking about a signature offer, for many of the coaches I work with, they're providing multiple services. They're doing this and this and this and this. It might be that they're doing some one-on-one coaching. They've got group calls. They've got a pre-recorded course. They're going to run a live retreat in the program. And so they might include several different things. And so I would figure out the going rate or range for each of these different things in the marketplace, if possible, and then say, where do I fit in that range? What do I think one of these coaching calls is worth with me? What's a group call worth with me? What's a
Mm-hmm.
course or a live event or whatever worth with me? And if we can put together this offer stack that says you get this, it's worth this much. You get this, it's worth this much. You get this, and it's worth this much. So the total value of the program is this much. Then you can decide what you want to charge once you know what the value of the program is. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you charge what the value is. That's the fair rate. or maybe because they're not buying one coaching call or one course, like they're buying this package deal in your signature offer, maybe and even if you just sell coaching one-on-one, if you're going to have a package of 6 months worth of coaching, they're not buying one call, they're buying 6 months worth of calls all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's a 10 to 50% discount on the value versus what you want to actually charge. And then you have to decide things like, am I willing to accept payment plans? And what would that look like? And maybe I'm going to charge a little bit more. So it can sound really complicated. Even as I'm explaining it here, I can understand how that might sound heavy. I would like to invite people to join. We've got a 4-day 100K Christian Coach Challenge that's designed to help Christian coaches and entrepreneurs go through this entire process, figure out who they want to work with, what problem they want to solve, why it matters, like really their mission statement, and then design their signature offer. And we've already done all the market research of the ranges, and we make it very easy in the different service areas for people to provide their price point and create an offer they can feel really good about. And we only charge $7 for that. So people could find that at www.salesisgood.com, and we've done the market research, or go out and do it yourself and like, get a focus group and ask people what they're charging and try to find your place in that range. But salesisgood.com, we'd love to help you with it. The final thing I would say about pricing is if you go through that process and you're like, okay, my program should be $5,000, or it should be $10,000 or 20, or it should be 500 a month or 1,000 a month or $3,000 a month, or whatever that number ends up being for you. If it's a big, scary number and you're like, oh no, that's what this is worth, but it feels so scary. Can I really say that out loud? If you're in that mindset place, I think it's okay to have a step up process where you say, okay, here's my price, but you could charge beta pricing as a new coach. To me, it's got to be within half or more of what the price should be. So if you find like, okay, your program should be $8,000, but you're like, oh no, I can't say $8,000, then you could say at the end of a sales call, and this is a 6-month program, it's $8,000. And for my first 5 clients, I'm going to invite them to join me for only 4K. Would you like to be one of those first 5 clients? And like, you could offer it for 4K or 5 or 6 instead of 8 if you needed to, but you need to have a clear number of clients you're going to offer that for, the first 3 or the first 5. And you need to say that out loud. And then you need to tell the truth. You need to honor that. So once you get through those first 3 or 5 and you build your confidence, then you need to go to the real price.
Yeah, I love that step up process. It really builds the confidence, right?
Yeah.
If you just don't have the confidence yet, because it's one of those things when you transition, if someone's working, you're traditionally used to working a salary position where you're making 45, 50, 65, even 6 figures a year. It doesn't necessarily translate that much. It's, saying like $8,000 for a program, and you may have to work that into your system a little bit. I know when I first started and first time leaving an hourly job to being an online business, I didn't really even consider the other logistics of running a business in the back end, all the other expenses and things like that. And then when I started factoring those in, I was like, oh man, okay, I feel more comfortable now charging a higher rate and even moving away from an hourly model into an actual package and project-based model versus just charging by the hour, because it just didn't even make any sense to do that anymore. So there is a little bit of evolution to what Justin is saying there in terms of going into it. So thanks for that advice. That's really, really great. Switching gears a little bit more here. So when we talk about entrepreneurs themselves, generally looking at how they're going about their business, how do how can entrepreneurs really just balance the fate value aspects of who they are and what they, and the things of how they operate with the need to actually generate income and grow their business?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we just need to show up with transparency and integrity. So if you make a list of the things that you really value, like the character traits that are your key values. So maybe you have things like honesty or generosity or love or curiosity or hard work or whatever those things are that you're like, yeah, these are my values. These are the things I believe in, maybe faith and belief and those sorts of things. Then you simply bring those things into your business.
Mm.
And like, you make sure that you're creating win-win relationships. So for me, like, I'm going to be loving on a sales call. And I'm going to also challenge people on a sales call. Those are two of my values. Like, and it really comes into like a loving challenge. I think both of those things are really important. I also believe in being welcoming and inviting people. And like, that's how we operate inside of our home. We want to invite people over. We want to welcome people to our house. So I'm going to do the same thing in sales. I'm going to be inviting. I'm going to be welcoming. I'm going to make it easy for people to say yes. And I'm going to make sure people are invited to our programs and our communities. But I'm just going to do it in the same way I would invite somebody over for dinner. It's going to feel like that same kind of inclusive opportunity to work with me. And, the way that we can show up on a sales call is like, we don't need to try to get someone to do what we want them to do. We don't need to try to paint somebody into a corner. We don't need to look out for our own good. We just need to get on a call with somebody. If you're meant to be a coach or a leader, just get on a call and provide coaching, provide leadership, and then invite them at the end to the next step. And that's going to feel really good. I think that some people are dishonest on sales calls or in front of their audiences. Some people speak too big of a game and promise too much. They overpromise, they underdeliver. Get in the habit of under promising and over delivering, or probably promise just the right amount. Some of you are probably under promising too much already. And so I don't want to, get you over the other side of that cliff either. But just be the person that you would want to work with, be the coach and the leader that you would want to hire. Show up with all those values in that package and trust that your tribe will find you and they will value you because of those things. I am not the flashiest coach in the marketplace. We do sales for a lot of 7 and 8 figure businesses. They hire us to do sales directly at their conferences. People that some of your listeners know, like Pete Vargas and Pedro Adeo and John Acuff and Dr. Darius Daniels and Dan Miller, before he passed, sadly, 6 months ago. And so many others, Nick and Megan Unsworth, David Bayer, a lot of like top coaches. And they almost all have a very different style than mine. We're different people. We're different personality types. I'm not going to be the flashy person in the marketplace. I'm not going to deliver like the really big promises in the marketplace. I'm not going to be super animated in the way that I lead. I'm going to show up in my personality, with my energy, with my level of peace, and with my language and my authenticity. And I'm just going to invite my people. And there are absolutely people in the marketplace who will come to me and say, I like that you're like this instead of like that in how some of the other people operate. And that's not trying to pit me against these people who I love working with, but that's to say that every one of us is different. There are going to be some people who would prefer one of the coaches that we work with, and they'd say, yeah, I really like working with you because you're this way, not that way. If they met me, they'd be like, I don't like that. And that's okay. We just have to accept that not everyone's going to be for us. If we authentically show up in our values and our personality and the gifts that God's given us, we'll find our tribe and just trust that it's okay for us not to be for everyone, and that God's going to present the people who resonate with our authentic leadership voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that sometimes even when we talk to a potential prospect or someone on a sales call, if they don't join us right away, that doesn't mean it's the end of it. Like I've had clients who talk to me, they just didn't hire me as their agent. I'm sorry, as their advertiser. They went somebody else for whatever reasons. It's fine. But they've come back and they're just like, okay, it just didn't work out. It wasn't a personality fit. Like they don't execute like we execute, things like that. And that's probably one of the biggest things that they just, they can always circle back over. Sometimes we need to go through experiencing a different coach, then be able to come back and say, okay, then your style is way better. Is what I want. Is time is way better. It's just what aligns better with them. So I wanted to ask you, because you did mention you work with several 7-8 figure coaches. Is there like one or two common traits or practices that you've observed in their approach to sales and money?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that they're willing to bet on themselves more than most. Like they're bold in the decisions they make financially and otherwise. It's different. Like I'm a multiple 6-figure coach and have been every year I've been in business, but have not cracked that 7-figure mark yet. And there's probably a boldness that they have that I don't yet have, and they figured out scale strategies. And so what I typically teach a new coach is like the easiest, simplest way to build a 6-figure business, which oftentimes is not the same as how to build a 7-figure business.
Mhm.
I'm actually like, we're wrestling with that at Faith to Influence right now. How can we go from being a multi 6-figure business to a 7-figure or multi 7-figure business? And there's some different strategies or skill sets. And so they've probably aligned themselves with the right people like you, somebody who can help them build the right funnel, the right ad strategies. And once they get that equation figured out of like, okay, when I spend $100 on ads, I get $150 back, and that's predictable every single time. Well, then they can theoretically scale to unlimited amounts of ad spend. They can go to 10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $100,000 a month. Some of them do this, right? Because it's a math equation. And if you get the equation right, then I imagine that there's like, there's an unlimited amount of opportunity there. And so they will boldly pour into that. They'll spend a lot of time with that. They'll align themselves with the right people. And so, I think that if you want to be a 6-figure coach, or you want to have a lifestyle business, 30,000, 50,000 a year, etc., like simple strategies, being a good person, operating with integrity, getting the right offer and the right sales strategy, and just networking and meeting good people, asking for referrals, like you can build a very successful business with simple strategies like that. I think for people who want to scale to a 7-figure business or multi 7-figure business, they need a different level of boldness, and they need to align themselves with the right people and the right strategies. And those are people who need to be hiring the Arfan Husseins of the world to receive the support they need to go to the next level, because the strategies that got them to where they aren't necessarily the same ones that are going to get them to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I've mentioned that the boldness of it there, and that is, I think it's true. There's a quote I heard from Damon John a long time ago that he just mentioned that he's willing and he's able to move from failure to failure as quickly as possible. Meaning that when something happens, he falls down, he gets right back up and keeps going at it again. And I find that to be true too for a lot of advertisers, a lot of clients I work with who advertise heavily. If a campaign doesn't perform and if they lose 10K, they're not so upset about it they quit advertising. It's just like, okay, that strategy doesn't work. Let's look at the ones that do work and let's double down. And we've come across the campaigns that now that hit the money, and it more than makes up for any of the losses that have come. But they have that experiment mentality, which is something I've talked about in the past. So I'm glad you mentioned the boldness there. It's a great one.
Yeah.
So my last question for you before I give you the stage here, just to kind of tell everyone how to connect with you, is what's one piece of advice you want to give to a Christian coach who, a new or existing, what's a new Christian coach who wants to launch and grow their business while maintaining their integrity?
Yeah. For the Christian coaches who know exactly what to do and have the skill sets already to take action, let go and say no to more things, and stay laser focused and almost singularly focused on the strategies that are going to get you results. Because it's so easy to get like shiny light syndrome and be like, oh, I'll try that. I'll try that. I'll do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. And spend too much time on the wrong things. And so really look at your calendar and say, does this action lead to the goal that I'm trying to achieve right now? And take the actions that are going to be most direct to the goal that you're trying to achieve again and again and again. For the Christian coach who's listening to this, who's like, I don't know what to do yet, or I don't necessarily yet have the skill sets to take the action myself, well, then hire the mentor or coach who can help you develop the skill sets and get really clear on direction. Ideally, find one ideal mentor or coach and work on one ideal strategy for a period of time before transitioning to the next course and the next idea and the next community and all those things. I think it's good to have diversity. I think it's good to have multiple voices. I think it's good to learn multiple skill sets, but find the mentor, the community, the support that you need that resonates most with you, and stick with that for enough time to get the result that you're looking for.
Love that. Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for being here today. Like I mentioned, I want to give you an opportunity to just tell everyone how they can connect with you and be part of the Faith to Influence world, and just be part of what you're doing here.
Yeah, a great first step that's free would be to go to goodsalespdf.com. Goodsalespdf.com. You can get our 10-step sales process for free, and then you'll get on our email list. So we'll send you our podcast episodes. We'll send you our weekly sales newsletter and a lot of other goodies. Goodsalespdf.com. If you're just really resonating with this, and you're like, oh my gosh, I love Arfan, I love Justin, I like the sound of the other people in this community, I want to be a part of that Christian Coaches Academy as well, you could go to f2itribe.com/CCA. That's the number 2, f2itribe.com/CCA, and consider joining us in our membership.
Awesome. Justin, I appreciate you coming on the show. So what we'll do is we'll drop those links in the show notes so you guys can have that there. Thank you all for tuning in today. I appreciate you again, Justin, for sharing your wisdom on sales today. And everyone, don't forget to subscribe to the show, subscribe to the channel. If you think of someone that made this episode maybe beneficial to them, if you're a coach, you're a little bit more advanced, but you know someone who's starting to step into it, they're new, they're of faith. Even if they're not, like everything that we share here today, it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, anybody. This really applies to you there. Of course, Justin operates with the Christian faith lens, so we want to make sure we honor that there. But share it with them, share with anyone you know, and we will catch you all on the next episode. So thank you again for tuning in today. Have a great one, everybody. Bye bye.